to introduce Vince Pacelli.
Thank you, Michelle. Just going to move this to the side.
You want me to get your things up for you?
Yes, if you don't mind. I'm not accustomed to the microphone and the cord.
And you can't hear the back.
I do have to beg everyone's indulgence. I am in the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. I do work what's called road patrol. I did work last night from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. this morning. I did get a few hours sleep today, so please bear with me if I have that glassy-eyed, distant look in my face. And as my wife will attest, when I get really tired, I tend to ramble a bit, so just keep me on task. What I thought I would do tonight is give a little background of myself, family, and work, go into what Michelle touched on with this Democratic strategy, then go into the type of sheriff and sheriff's office we will have here in Carroll County and why I think it is so important. I grew up in an Army family. My dad did 2 tours of combat in Vietnam. He was highly decorated. I moved to Maryland in 1979. I wanted to live a life of adventure. I wanted a big city police department. I took the test for New York City, Baltimore, and as my dad was stationed outside of Richmond at Fort Lee, Virginia, I took the test in Richmond as well. Baltimore called first, and I came here. I had a wonderful career with the Baltimore Police Department. I had a wide variety of assignments. You'll see on the flyer that Michelle is handing out, that's me 20 years ago on horseback. That was my horse Sundance. I was very fortunate to spend 6.5 years in the mounted unit as an officer before getting promoted to sergeant, and then another 2 years as a supervisor in the mounted unit, motorcycle unit, ultimately ended up in the detective division. My last assignment was the commander of the district detective section. This consisted of 198 people and a fleet of 51 vehicles. It was quite a big operation. We were responsible for investigating all non-fatal shootings, serious assaults, robberies, burglaries, and provided oversight to domestic violence. A number of units in my command did receive what are called unit citations for their meritorious work. I left the Baltimore Police Department when a job landed in my lap, Director of Security at the University of Maryland Medical Center, which is where shock trauma is. I was in my 25th year. One of my detectives, in case he was working on, took him to the medical center. He met the Director of Security, who was wearing a couple hats. She mentioned this job. I got it. Inherited a very dysfunctional security force. I was able to turn it around. I published an article in Campus Safety magazine on what we at the security department were able to accomplish as far as improving customer service, reducing crime. I had implemented my core philosophy, the 3 P's of community policing: partnership, problem solving, and prevention. I brought in the proven principles of crime reduction, and we saw results drop by over 50%. It was absolutely wonderful. Later in 2006, I was selected by Security Magazine as one of the 25 most influential security executives in the United States. It was quite prestigious. Unfortunately, while I was there was a change in corporate leadership, and along with many others, I was asked to resign, and I was dumbfounded by this because our results within the security department were overwhelming. In February of 2006, the security department commissioned a survey which healthcare systems and hospitals are really big on, and the results were just overwhelming, and that became the crux of my article. So despite the success, despite national recognition, I found myself out of work. I thought I would have no problem finding a job in Maryland. We have 4 children, now ages 20 to 31. Our youngest is serving in the United States Marine Corps, stationed at Camp Lejeune. But he was just going into his freshman year at North Carroll, then Manchester Valley. Child number 2, our daughter, who now lives in St. Louis, she was going into her senior year in college, and child number 3 was going into a senior year in high school. So it was no time to uproot the family. My wife moved to Carroll in 1971. We as a family moved up here in 1988. So it was no time to disrupt the family. Our youngest son, born in '94, was the only house he knew, was the only bedroom he knew, was the only neighborhoods he knew. He was hooked into the athletic programs here in Carroll and all that. So I said, we're not moving. And I had been contacted by by a couple of corporate medical systems, one in South New Jersey, one in Northern Virginia, but it just wasn't the time to move. So I saw an opportunity with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. My main objective in joining the Sheriff's Office was to get a job. I wanted to get a job. I needed a job in the county. I have a passion for local law enforcement. I believe in people. I believe that law enforcement are almost like freedom fighters, so that we can ensure that people are free of fear of crime, but just as importantly, free of the fear of crime. And it's been an interesting experience. As I mentioned, I'm a road patrol deputy. I worked in northwest part of the county from Route 31 to the Pennsylvania state line, and from Littlestown Pike and Old Hanover Road all the way to Frederick County, Route 31 to the PA line. So it's quite a large area. I spend the majority of my time in Union Bridge, as you can imagine. And at one point in time, I was the Union Bridge community deputy, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself there. But unfortunately, when the state government got rid of their state user tax, well, they kept it. If you remember that, Union Bridge lost an enormous amount of funding, could no longer afford the program. So I've had a wonderful career in law enforcement, from the Baltimore Police Department to the University of Maryland Medical Center, to include my 7 years here in the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, because we have a wonderful community, we have a wonderful county, and that's one reason I am motivated to run for sheriff. Now, last summer, my wife was begging me not to run for sheriff, but I had deputies in the sheriff's office, and I had citizens coming to me saying, hey, you need to run for sheriff. We need somebody like you. So I thought, well, I'll see what candidates come out, and if I feel very comfortable with them, if I feel, that they would do a better job than I believe I can, then I won't run. Well, the 3 candidates came out, and I know all 3 of them, and I just felt I can do it better. I felt that I had the passion, I had the integrity, the character, the experience, the accomplishment, and at that time, being in the sheriff's office for 6 years, I thought I was best placed to know what the citizens were looking for and how we as a sheriff's office can fill that need. I finally turned to my wife, Ruth. It was last summer. I said, I'm sorry, I cannot stand on the sidelines. I have to run. So then the question became, how do we do this? I learned an enormous amount in 2010 when I ran for county commissioner in District 1. That was my first foray into politics. I'd never run for any office prior to that. It was a crowded primary field, I think of 7 candidates. I came in a distant second to Robin Frazier. It was a unique experience, and I learned an enormous amount. So now I'm looking at the 3 Republican candidates as well. If I join, if I become the 4th candidate, I'm back kind of where I was in 2010. So I said, how can I do this? And then one day I was reading an article written by Bill O'Reilly, and I'm sure everyone here knows Bill. He wrote this article in response to criticism he had received because of money or donations he'd made to so-called left-wing causes. So he writes this article. A light bulb went off in my head. I said, in the 30-plus years I've been in law enforcement, not one time when I've responded to the home of a crime victim, the scene of a traffic accident, or had any encounter with any citizen, has anyone ever asked me my party affiliation. The only question they have, if they have a question, is, can you help me? Then it occurred to me that nobody dials 911 and says, send me a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, deputy, officer, or trooper. They just say, send me somebody. Same thing goes with those of you who might be with our volunteer fire services or emergency medical teams. So that never happens. So that was a revelation. I started talking to people inside and out of government. Remember, I traveled in Republican circles for years. My wife is, at the time, vice president of the Carroll County Women's Republic Club. I frequently went to those meetings. I was a constant presence at the Republican Central Committee fundraisers, whether it was a dinner or whether it was a breakfast. I did when I campaigned in 2010, I campaigned for Nancy Stocksdale. Wherever I went, I was bringing her paperwork with me, and I worked with young Jeff Peters, who's on Susan Krebs' staff. So I reached out to people in and out of government and bounced this idea. I also did some research on politicians or elected officials who had switched parties. And lo and behold, and I had forgotten this, one of my heroes had done the same thing. James Webb, former U.S. Senator from Virginia, Democrat, is a 1968 graduate of the United States Naval Academy, highly decorated Marine in Vietnam, Secretary of the Navy under Ronald Reagan. 2006, says either he decided or people came to him and said, run for U.S. Senate in Virginia. He was a Republican. His opponent, he already knew, was the very, very popular George Allen, who was here a few years ago and spoke to the Republican Central Committee. George Allen, son of the famous football coach George Allen, former congressman for Virginia, former governor of Virginia. James Webb knew, odds are, in a primary system, I'm not beating this guy. What did he do? He switched to the Democratic Party, still strong on the Second Amendment, still strong in his views on immigration, and he won. That was kind of the tipping point for me. I continued my fact-finding mission, talking to people in and out of government, citizens, and I said, you know what, I looked at raw data. I looked at the 59,000 Republicans, 31,000 Democrats, 21,000 independents. Yes, people have said you should have went independent. And like I said earlier, we're way beyond that. So we're way beyond that, and so I don't really give it that much thought anymore. Would that have been a wise move? I don't know. But when I was in the decision-making process, I, of course, met with the Democratic Central Committee. I was very upfront with them. They already knew me by name. I met a number of them during the campaign season in 2010 at some of the forums. They welcomed me with open arms. If you know who Don West is, he basically said, Vince, we know these guys. No matter what party you run under, you are the best candidate. And so they had no qualms about me walking in the door and saying, hey. So they looked beyond my conservative values as opposed to their liberal values. They looked beyond that because they said, hey, this guy, he's the best candidate. Yeah, we're going to welcome onto the team. We're going to welcome onto the team. So that is all that went into my decision-making process. It was a way, how can I get through this Republican primary? Because I knew my opponents. I knew that Phil Caston was strongly connected with Ken Trigoni. He was going to get a lot of running room with that. I knew Jim DeWeese, and I didn't know everything about Jim DeWeese that I know now, but I knew where he was coming from, and I knew Chris Fiora had some strong, passionate voters in his team. So I'd have been the odd man out. How was I going to garner enough support at that time? How can I distinguish myself? How can I get myself into the finals? And that's what I did. I've got myself into the finals. If I had not made that decision, I would not be here speaking to you. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity, because it's groups like this that can play a critical role, not just in the national elections, but certainly, of course, in local elections. Michelle touched on the differences between myself and Jim DeWeese. It couldn't be bigger. Couldn't be bigger. I've spent my career serving in local law enforcement. That means working with local residents on local issues. There is a reason that our municipalities have their own police departments, because they want their police officers working on local issues. Jim DeWeese is a state trooper. He has not hidden the fact that he is loyal to the state police. He has a state police mindset. I have a local law enforcement mindset. If anybody had the opportunity to watch the sheriff's forum, the Second Amendment came up. And why does the Second Amendment keep coming up? Why is that such a big issue? Well, one, it's one of our natural rights. Two, it's probably the greatest symbol of a free society, the armed citizen. Greatest symbol, because what's our biggest deal here? Life, and the ability to protect that life. I would argue that the Second Amendment is probably our most important amendment, because without the ability to defend yourself, you become a victim. And the United States has never been about being a victim. So his views on the Second Amendment, as he said at the forum, the law is the law. I enforce the law across the board. I take blinders off, and I enforce the law. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir here. If the law was the law, we wouldn't have appellate courts. If the law was the law, we wouldn't have a federal judiciary. And if the law was the law, we wouldn't have a Supreme Court. My answer to that same question was, how do you balance it? Well, we have certain things in our toolkit, such as discretion. We look at the spirit of the law. What is the law really trying to accomplish? We look at the intent of the quote-unquote alleged violator. What's really going on here? Was this a direct affront to the people, to our government? Then we use our sense of reason and our discretion, and we make an appropriate law enforcement decision. I'm at the complete opposite spectrum And why is that? Because I'm steeped in local law enforcement where we work with the people intimately. The state police do a fine job doing what they do. I am not saying anything disparaging about the Maryland State Police. They do a fine job. Are they local police? They're not local police. They do not have a local police mindset. And what does that mean? 3 P's of community policing. Partnership, where we show value in each other. The law enforcement is not above or beneath the people. We are part of the people. We are part of the citizenry, which plays a critical role in the office of the sheriff, because the office of the sheriff is found in the Maryland State Constitution. It is a constitutional position. Answerable to who? Not a mayor and town council, not a governor, not a state senator or delegate. It's answerable to everybody here. Answers directly to the citizens. It is unique in the world today to have the chief law enforcement officer in a jurisdiction answer solely to the citizens. So what does that mean? That means you guys are running the show. Vince Pacelli, as sheriff, wants to ensure that our Carroll County Sheriff's Office is as close to a constitutional sheriff's office as possible. What does that mean? That means we answer to you. And that as sheriff, I hope to be here on a regular basis so that you guys keep me on the straight and narrow if I tend to stray because of so many things going on. As sheriff, that's what I hope to do. I can guarantee, because I've done this in the past, and I gave this guarantee to the Fraternal Order of Police back on January 5th, and I can go into that whole fiasco if you care to. I told them that my vision for the Carroll County Sheriff's Office is this is going to be the finest law enforcement agency in the state, bar none. And I also said, I know this is bold, I know this is audacious, but I can do it because I've done it before. I've taken units in police work that were good, made them better. Because I get that talent out of people. I took a dysfunctional security force, turned it around, where we were getting contacted from security departments and campus police departments from across the country, and how, this is based on the article I wrote, hey, how did you do this? We want to do this because I empower people to get the job done. I decentralize. And I empower people. And we know the state of Maryland likes centralization. They want to run everything. We know that. So I can do that, and I told them specifically, this does not involve, like my opponent wants to have motorcycles. My opponent wants to have a full-time SWAT team. That should send up alarm bells because of the militarization of the police. Now, how do I know this? Because I'm blessed. I'm in the sheriff's office. I'm in the sheriff's office, and I know these things because my co-workers come to me. So we're talking about, it's even gotten so far as some guys have already been told they will never have to shave again. Yes, this is all true. I'm telling you, it's true. This is what keeps me motivated. This is what keeps me causes me to overlook this Democrat thing and keep pushing forward. That's why I'm here today. Motorcycles, SWAT team, people getting promoted, people getting transferred, people getting jobs, all of this stuff. How he's going to pay for it? I have the slightest idea. So there, excuse me?
We don't need it.
Of course we don't. Of course, I was a motorcycle officer for a number of years in Baltimore, an urban environment. When you have, like when I was there in 2000, yes. If you look on my Vince Pacelli for Sheriff Facebook page, you'll see a beautiful shot with me and George Bush. Why? Because he was on the campaign trail. We escorted him. We escorted him all over the place. Everybody was coming in. We did the Army-Navy game that year. We did conventions. We did an NFL Players Association meeting. So yeah, in an urban environment, yeah, a motorcycle unit can be very important in Carroll County. And what people don't understand is you have a motorcycle unit, well, you need cars too. And the injury rate for motor officers is astronomical. I know it. I had one of my guys ended his career with a nasty accident near Hopkins Hospital. Injury rate is high. Same thing with the mounted unit. So we don't need that. A SWAT team. What is up with the SWAT teams? That's called militarization of the police. And what that... It's a form of control. It's a change in mindset where you are no longer viewed as a citizen with unalienable rights, but as a civilian and in some cases a combatant. It's a whole mindset thing. Research it. Do a Google search. Militarization of the police. It is shocking. I've known about this for a number of years. This started back in 1996-97. There are jurisdictions now who have disbanded their SWAT teams. There are jurisdictions now who have passed local ordinances prohibiting their police department from taking anything for the federal government. Because, as you guys know, once the federal government gets involved, once they start giving you beads and trinkets and toys, they own you.
Isn't this what Obama wants?
Yes, of course. Yes.
He wants his own.
I could tell you, I'm going to tell you two quick stories, and I'm hoping, and forgive me again because I am very tired, I'm already dragging. I'm going to tell you two quick stories that have really hit home for me, my experience in the sheriff's office. Last summer, I was working, we were on day shift. Two young men working with the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company went to a residence here outside of Westminster. I think it was Willow. I have the report at home. BG&E had credentials. We wanted to see the homeowner's bill, make sure he was saving money, so on and so forth. The homeowner was 59 years old, in a wheelchair. He said he wasn't interested. He says, you guys got to go. They became belligerent, obstinate. He kept asking him to leave. He would not leave. Just inside the door, he had a black powder pistol. Black powder pistol. He grabs it. He does not point it at them. He just holds it aside and says, hey, you guys got to go. You guys got to go. They retreat and call the cops. Deputy sheriffs get there. My co-workers, I was not there because that was, south of Westminster. I work in the northwest part of the county. These two young men give them the story. Deputies want to arrest this man. Fortunately, an older deputy got there, and I will say this with pride, he did 6 years with the Baltimore City Police Department. He was here. We say what we want about Baltimore City, but that experience in dealing with citizens on a day-to-day basis at the local level is invaluable. Invaluable. So he's there, he goes, hey, you guys got to slow down. Nothing really happened here. Nothing. They're saying he pointed it at him. Even if he did point it at him, which we found out he didn't, it was not a crime. It was not a crime. Well, they call the duty officer at the station. Says, oh yeah, you got to make this arrest. That deputy is saying, hold the phone. So they call the state's attorney's office, and this is what the advice was. It doesn't appear that a crime had occurred, but try to convince this man to turn over his gun.
Oh my God.
I have the report, Michelle. I can show it to you. I can't show it to everybody here because certain things. This is a true story. Now, I don't know all of this. I know bits and pieces of it. The next day, another beautiful sunny day, I go to the deputies that were there and say, hey, what happened? So the one young deputy says, oh, tells me the story. Well, he overreacted. I said, stop right there. You can't put yourself in his position. You don't know the level of fear he may have been experiencing. So I thought they took the black powder gun because the state's attorney said, try to convince him to give up the gun, which he did. I get the report.
He gave up the gun?
Oh, well, let me finish. He gives up the gun, but he also gives up his 10 other guns.
Oh my God.
This is a true story. He got them all back, but that's not the story. The story is the police in a sheriff's office under the guidance of a state's attorney, not Jerry Barnes, a state's attorney, convinced this man to give up his firearms. And then, of course, the state's attorney's office looked at the investigation and did what? No crime occurred. I could have told you that when I was there. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. This is the fear, and that's happening now. Or that happened last summer. And then we've heard the stories about the Maryland State Police. Well, they're looking at these handgun laws, and they're going to people. There was a celebrated incident down on 27 where a SWAT team went there to seize guns from a guy, from a crime that he...
Mr. Stone cited.
Yes.
Yes.
And what?
They took his guns, and I think, did Judge Jones not get involved? I have not seen the report, nor have I talked to him.
There's a little bit more going on than that.
I think so.
I'm not at liberty to share.
Understood. But this is where I'm going with this. This is supposed to be a constitutional sheriff's office. And the sheriff, the primary role of the sheriff is what? To uphold your constitutional rights before handling.
That was a state police operation up there.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
That's the danger of my opponent. He already said the law's the law. The law's the law.
Dad pointed a gun at his 13-year-old
I heard that. I heard that. This is why it's.
16 at his daughter.
This is why. Now, what can a sheriff do about this? Well, when I was with the Baltimore City Police Department, because there are so many law enforcement agencies working in our major metropolitan areas, they have a system where if you are going to execute a search and seizure warrant, you have to make certain notifications so that you don't show up when somebody else is showing up. If you follow me, we don't want a house being hit by the FBI and by Baltimore City or whatever the case may be. We can do something like that here. Number two, and this occurred to me Friday morning, and I think it's a funny story. Do we have time? Can I continue? Okay. If you're still interested, I'll continue. If you're tired, I won't.
You're tired. We're not.
I'm exhausted. But last Thursday I worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Get home. I don't work the weekend, so I don't want to sleep the whole day away. So what I basically do is I go into the den in our basement. We have 2 beagles, Bella and Abby. And after I feed them and let them out, and I've changed into something more comfortable, we all come back in the house, and I stretch out on the couch, and one of them snuggles in here, and one of them is down here wrapped up in a blanket. And we all fall asleep together. It's not as much fun as having an infant child fall asleep on your chest, but it's the next best thing. So what happened? The phone rang? What happened? Something happened. The cell phone went off or something. I said,
the electricity.
oh yes, the power had gone out. And so Ruth had gotten up and she was resetting the stove and the microwave, and you hear the beeping. So I get jarred from my sleep. And what happened is I come upstairs and said, I just think I came up with a great idea. Because Michelle had told me when we spoke 2 weeks ago that there was concern among this group that I, being a Democrat, what policies that I would come up with. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that because I'm not some liberal, and I even told the Democratic Central Committee I didn't just make a hard left turn. I'm a very honest person. I told them up front what I was doing. I wasn't being diabolical. I said, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. Said, why wouldn't we not have a unit within the sheriff's office? And the name I came up with, just off the top of my head, was the Bill of Rights Investigative and Protection Unit. This would be like 2 people that would oversee stuff like what happened to Mr. Stonecipher when we get our hands on it. We would have citizens come in and say, hey, you know what? My daughter was at the community college and she was saying something in class and they shouted her down, and I think her freedom of speech was violated. As a constitutional sheriff, is there some reason we can't investigate that and then funnel into the right avenue? And it might even bring, if we don't get anywhere, at least it would bring awareness to what's going on. Whether it's at a college campus, a local high school, Mr. Stonecipher down at Route 27, or Mr. Such and Such living outside of Westminster. Now, I haven't fleshed it out. I've never heard of this happening. You would think, well, if it's a constitutional office, it ought to be doing that. It's not happening. It's not happening, and I already cited you an example from last summer where it's not happening. That man should have never been. He volunteered to give up his guns. We'll leave it at that. That should have never happened. The request should have never been made. He didn't do anything wrong. Oh, he got him back. Yes.
They came in my house over just like, and they had transposed the account number on the back of it. They said, we're here to turn off your electricity. I said, you're what? So I show them a bill. I said, no, this is paid. Oh, he said, yeah. So then my phone rings an hour later. The supervisor called. He says, my guy said you were wearing a gun. I said, that's right. I was. It's my property, isn't it? Well, they felt intimidated. I said, well, I don't give a damn what they feel. It's my property, it's my gun, and I never once threatened them. And I said, and I even took the extra courtesy to put the dog in the house so he didn't chew their leg off. What more were you at? But they said, well, we might call the police. I said, please do that. I said, but call up, or maybe Phil Cassidy, tell them what you did.
Right. Exactly.
This is what's going on. They all think
I know.
you got a gun, you're a criminal.
I know that. Yes.
May I ask you a question? If someone does break into your house and you do defend yourself.
Yes.
And I've heard the joke, make sure you pull them inside, the half of them inside.
If you can articulate that you are in fear of your life, you can do what's necessary.
So would you have to be injured in order to
No.
not be brought to trial for defending yourself?
No. All you have to be is a fear of your life.
That's it?
If you think you're about to be killed, you can defend yourself.
Really? I thought that they came down hard.
They may try, but it doesn't typically work.
I thought you had to really...
No, you don't have to drag the person back in the house.
Maybe the body lands out.
I know. No, I wouldn't be concerned about that. And if you were concerned about that, are you willing to risk your life for that?
Right.
So, the other story I want to tell you has nothing to do with guns, but has to do with the mindset of people today. Early this year, I was at a home on Carroll